Welcome to the Apostolic Forum. I'm Dana Thompson, and today we have a very exciting show for you. We're going to be talking about the faithfulness of God, the faithfulness of God. And my friend, one thing I've learned, and that is that God is faithful even when I'm not. And here to discuss this topic with me is Michael Brabson. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing great.
I know Michael, but that's what I'm so used to calling you by. But,
yeah,
I gotta get
Michael. Never late for dinner, though. No.
Well, and also we have John Metcalf back with us again. How are you, John?
Doing fine, thank you.
Always good to see you.
Thank you.
Well, Michael, since this is your first time on the Apostolic Forum, and this is the first time the viewers have an opportunity to meet you, your spirit and heart, why don't you just spend some time and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Mike Brabson. I'm not originally from here. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. Been here since 1996. Came to the area, had family here in the area, and then ended up working a little bit for Westinghouse. Did some small different types of contracts, and was in business with a gentleman. Ended up putting him off going to church for a year, and after that business failed, found myself in a situation staying with him, and he literally invited me to church that I had put him off for a while. Went with him to church, ended up getting saved, been a member of that church ever since. Met my wife at the church, have 3 kids, live in Bowie. And so God has been very, very good to me in my walk with him. So
wow.
That's been here, this is 12 years now, seems like only 2. My youngest son is 7, my oldest is 21. My daughter is in between, she's 18, 2 in college, 1 is Cornerstone Christian right in the area, and I'm just really glad to be here, so I'm blessed.
Well, sound like a very founded Christian man who loved the Lord.
Now.
So you really appreciate those passages where the Apostle Paul says, fornicators, adulterers, whoremongers, such were some of you.
Yes.
But you notice the verb tense there is were. We don't have to worry about that anymore. And John, it's always good to see you. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Oh,
yeah,
good. Well, Michael, you said something that really struck me. You said you were from Ohio.
Yes.
Now, is there anything good that comes from Ohio?
Me? No. There are a lot of good things that come from Ohio, but there are a lot of jokes that come from about Ohio also. And being from Cleveland, I've heard all the different jokes from Mistake by the Lake and a lot of other different things. But we have a lot of folks who come from Ohio and then they leave and go elsewhere. Why? The economy's really depressed now. For me, I found myself in a situation. I graduated from Ohio Wesleyan and couldn't really find different types of jobs that I looked for. So I ended up, getting in the military. The military ultimately ended up bringing me to Maryland through a lot of different other changes. But good things come out of Ohio. The one thing that's bad that comes out of Ohio is the cold weather. So I'll leave the 0 degrees and below there. Yeah. And, go back and visit my family.
Well, I know you probably know my daughter, Teresa, who is 20. She is at Ohio State right now in med school. And that's what she says. She sent me, I was following her on Twitter the other day, and she says, wow, we went from 70 to 30. She says, I'm going to get sick. I need a coat. I said, daughter, don't worry about getting sick. Just make sure you have your coat.
Yeah.
So I know the weather can be extreme there. But you're not a Cleveland Browns. Tell me you're not a Cleveland Brown.
I'm a die-hard Cleveland Browns, Indians, and Cavaliers fan. I have nothing to cheer about this year, other than the Redskins are almost as bad as the Browns.
Thanks a lot,
when
Michael.
folks sit there and they want to abuse my team, I'll just sit there and give me a little time. But sports-wise in Cleveland, it's been a drought for a very long time. So. I'm die-hard Cleveland. I mean, you know how some folks are bandwagon fans of fair weather? That's not me.
I'm surprised we haven't converted you yet. Have you been to the FedEx Field?
Yes, I've been to FedEx Field, have had my name on the Jumbotron, and ran through the thing. So I've done all of that.
And you're still not a Washington Redskins fan?
No, I have my Browns jersey on.
Oh, man. All right. Well, God's faithful anyway.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Well, John, we're talking about the faithfulness of God. Where do we start in this? I mean, from the very beginning, we see a vivid picture in Scripture in Genesis where a man basically failed. He failed in his attempt to preserve himself and to protect himself. And we see in the very beginning where this man had everything that you could want. Sound like the typical story, you have everything you want, but there's always something you shouldn't want. But it's almost like a kid, when you shouldn't want something. You tell them not to touch this one thing, but they can touch anything else in the house. Mm-hmm. But they always go for that one thing. What is it about the tendency of man that allows him to go after that which is forbidden? I call it forbidden, the forbidden fruit that starts off with this topic showing and displaying the faithfulness of God.
Try this with your kids. You can look in every pocket that I have except this one. And it's the same thing. That's the one they've got to go for. Yeah, you're absolutely right. When God created Adam, the nice thing was that God walked with him in the cool of the day. He had intimate fellowship with Adam. They really functioned as a father and a son. It was wonderful relationships. But Adam decided to look in that one pocket that, he was forbidden to do. And of course, when he did, the things that he immediately did is he hid from God, and he clothed himself.
Right.
And that's the thing that most of us gravitate to. We see God as the enemy, mm-hmm. or somebody we've got to be good for, or we've got to be perfect. I mean, we hear the stories of. I can remember a couple people saying, "Well, I could never go in that church. The church will fall down if I go in there." Stuff like that.
Right.
And faithfulness of God is that He is faithful. He still loves us. No matter what we do, He loves us. And the wonderful thing for us to understand is that we can return to that intimacy. Mm-hmm. We can return to that fellowship that Adam had with God.
Right. Michael, how do you see the faithfulness of God in the very beginning? The book of Genesis opens up telling us how God created man and woman, and then we see, of course, this temptation by the serpent in the garden and the fall of man in Genesis chapter number 3. Does this hallmark to you, or have you always seen this as God's faithfulness to His people?
I guess hallmark might be a big statement, but I see it as God being faithful regardless of man's intent, and that the intent of man wasn't to sin, it's just that he did. It's the same way the thing with the child. His intent would be to go through all the other pockets, but he just happened to go for this one, and all the excuses that come behind that. Mm-hmm. But I really believe that faithfulness is not based upon your thought, not based upon your intent. It's not based upon something that is within your control. The faithfulness is something that is consistent, unconditional, and continuous. And so I see God in a light that the same faithfulness that He had toward Adam, He has today. And so I have to look at it and ask myself, who changed, me or God? And we know the answer to that one is the one that I changed. And I think that's the same thing with Adam and during the time where he sinned. It wasn't that God changed. It wasn't that God changed in any shape, fashion, or form. It's that Adam changed. Right. And in that, he continued to take on his own persona instead of the one that he had already been given by God. And so in that, he literally finds himself following his own self-will, sort of run riot type of thing, versus being in close intimacy in his walk with God. And I think that's where we find a lot of the same challenges today. And then when you start saying faithfulness, the first thing when people hear faithfulness, at least I do, I think of marriage, and you think of faithfulness. Well, my faithfulness is contingent upon what you do and don't do, what you may or may not think, and it has a bunch of conditions on it.